TS Grand Finals is less than 10 days away, and I wanted to make a different type of video. I want to go over every trio's most realistic path to being able to win this FNCS. I'm going to be talking about so many trios on both EU and NA. Real close to starts though, please subscribe to the channel if you guys are new, as we try our best to upload daily competitive content for you guys. If you guys want to support me even more, the best way to do so is by using code KDOG in the Fortnite item shop. Make sure you guys follow me on my Twitch, link in the description down below, or just make sure you show up here on the day of Grand Finals, because we are going to be streaming it on both YouTube and Twitch, and I want to see all of your guys' faces in there. Without further ado though, let's get this video started. So we normally start on NA, but today I want to start off on EU, and I'm gonna have different tiers for each of these trios. So this first tier that I have for EU is conned/intriguing potential. So like the tier says, this is going to be a lot of trios that are contested, and then some other trios that we don't know if they're going to be conned yet, but I do think they have really intriguing potential if they are not going to be contested. So the first two trios that I want to talk about used to be one of the most iconic duos in Fortnite history. The first one is Seti, Yapko, and Panzer. Now this team was contested in the only Div Cup finals that they played, but just in a straight head-to-head comparison versus Cammy, Hari, and iDrop, who was also contested in the only Div Cup they played together, I think as of right now, I like Seti, Yapko, and Panzer's fragging ability better than Cammy's trio, but I like Cammy, Hari, and iDrop's consistency potential better than Yapko's trio. Both of these teams have kind of been struggling off spawn when they are contested, and I don't necessarily think that either one of these trios has FNCS winning potential this season, but if they are uncon, I think they both have real arguments for potentially being able to qualify for LAN. I think a lot of us could probably agree that the split was much needed for Cammy and Seti. They just cannot work together on the same team anymore, especially in a trios meta nowadays. They just played too similar of roles, and I don't think preparation wise either one of these teams are really going into Grand Finals with the expectations of potentially winning. I think they are just mainly focused on trying to be able to qualify for LAN. And then probably what is going to be the biggest or the second biggest off spawn fight on all of EU this season is going to be the Mr. Savage Chap and Rezon versus Focus, Mixon, and Uppel. Now we also have Rax's trio, who's already said that he is going to be going there as well, but I'm only going to be talking about Focus and Mr. Savage's trio just because I think they have the highest upside as trios. Now for Mr. Savage Chap and Rezon, I think this weekend in their group, their performance that they show there is going to be their real upside for if they are actually going to be able to be uncontested, because we really just haven't got to see them be fully uncon in a set lobby finals for pretty much the entire season. The thing that sucks for this trio is if they're gonna have to be at a triple contested resistance space, we just have to look at this as unbiased as possible and say that it is probably going to be nearly impossible for either one of these teams to be able to qualify for globals. As of right now, just based off of what I have seen this season, I honestly really did like the potential upside of Focus, Uppel, and Mixon. They placed 8th place in the only Div Cup finals that they played where they were uncontested. We have to remember that both Rax's trio and Mr. Savage's trio were the ones that came after that and ended up contesting Focus, who was the first trio to land there and had that spot fully uncon in week 1. If you just look at Focus's match history in that Div Cup finals, in their first 3 games, you could tell that they were still getting used to the drop spot, getting a 1 elimination 17th, 0 elimination 18th, and a 5 elimination 11th. And then in the very final 3 games, I think they really did have their stuff together. They got an 8 elimination 3rd, 5 elimination 8th, and a 4 elimination 5th, showing real progression. And I really do believe that if they had this spot completely uncontested the entire season, this would be a lock for placing top 10 in Grand Finals. But like I just said for Mr. Savage, if this is going to be a triple contest in Grands, none of these teams are probably going to be able to qualify for globals. Let's talk about the con teams on NA that I also don't have much hope for, and that is the trios of Rise, G Money, and Aviv versus Curve, Josh, and Tyler. Now, all drama aside, I am definitely currently higher on Rise's trio than I am on Curve's trio. Rise's trio looked absolutely insane in their group where they were uncontested finally at Outpost Enclave. They showed that they do have LAN qualifying potential, but from pretty much every single tournament that we have seen this season, it doesn't look like Curve's trio is going to be leaving the drop spot as of now, and it looks like these teams are going to be going into Grands fully contesting each other. It seems like Rise, G Money, and Aviv do have a slight edge on Curve's trio as of right now, and I do think that Curve, Josh, and Tyler are probably the most underrated team with top 10 potential on NA, but I just don't think any of these guys are going to be able to live up to that potential while being contested. Let's stick on NA here and talk about the trios that I think are currently in that tier 2 of the potential LAN qualifiers and maybe sneaky FNCS winners. This group really does just have a lot of trios that I feel like are kind of around that same caliber of tier. The first team that I want to talk about is Visuals, Braids, and Aminish. Now they had an absolutely amazing eval cup, and a lot of people were calling this trio a one-season wonder, and that they were never really going to be able to get to the heights that they got to in last grand finals, where they finished in 4th place. And if you look at their last grand finals performance, they only had one game outside of the top 10 in that entire grand finals. So I think if they're going to want to be able to win grands this season, they are going to need to have another historic consistency performance, but they're going to need more than just that. They're also going to need to build off of that and finish with way more elims than they did last grand finals. They had the least total elims in the entire top 5, so they are going to need to probably be the most consistent team in grand finals and probably finish around that top 2 or 3 range for most elims as well, which I just don't know if a trio of the caliber of Visuals, Braids, and Aminish will be able to be a top 3 elim team in a grand finals. The next trio is King, Phaser, and PH Zen. Now I feel like this is one of the main wildcard teams of the season on NA. If they are uncontested, I think they really do have a ceiling of getting somewhere around a top 6 or 7. This trio is going to need to master the storm surge strategies on NA, and hopefully they've been putting in the work and putting in the practice recently to adapt to a NA playstyle, as we all know that they have just been so used to playing on Brazil. I don't think I'm necessarily ready to say that I think this team can top 5 in a grand finals, but like I just said, I wouldn't be surprised if they finished around that 6 or 7 range. Now let's talk about some of our main trios that are in contention for qualifying for LAN from NA. The first one up is Booga, Threats, and Craze. Now this trio's win condition for grands is going to be high ground. They're going to need to show us that similar consistency to what we saw from them in the Div Cups and not their hit or miss playstyle that we have seen in the recent Eval Cup and in their group stage as well. We all know that Booga's trio is always going to be a high ground oriented team. This team should be able to get Storm Surge. They were only one spot off of being able to qualify for LAN last season, and I feel like a lot of us would agree that they added more fragging potential from last season, picking up Craze instead of Rapid now. So if they're able to finish somewhere in that 60 total elims compared to the 50 total elims that they had last season while keeping up their consistency, this could definitely be a top 5 trio on NA. And maybe if the cards fall right for them, this could maybe be a FNCS winning team as well. And then the last trio that I have in this tier is Muzz, Shadow, and Sphinx. Muzz told me himself that he really does believe in this trio's fighting ability, and he thinks that they can be a top fragging team on the region. I think their real big determining factor in this grand finals though is we are going to really see what kind of player Shadow actually is. We know what we're going to get out of Muzz in this grands. We know what we're going to get out of Sphinx. Shadow is the real wild card player here, as he has qualified for a global championship before, but I don't think he has ever even placed top 7 before in a grand finals. And for a trio that wants to be able to qualify for LAN, this is going to have to be Shadow's best ever grand finals performance. And I've absolutely loved what I've seen from him so far in the Div Cups, but he is going to have to keep that up if this team wants to either qualify for globals or win FNCS. Now let's talk about the wild card tier for me on EU. The first trio that is in this tier is Pix, Darm, and Demus. Now, I think this trio 100% can win this FNCS if they are going to be uncontested, even though that they have not really shown us any real consistency so far this season. The only thing that I really have to back up that claim is their previous 2 grand finals performances, where they placed 5th place in all 3 of their first ever grand finals and then 3rd place in all 3 of their second ever grand finals. They have shown us that they are grand finals risers no matter what they do in the Div Cups or Eval Cups throughout the season. When it comes down to a grand finals, so far just based off the historical data, they are grand finals performers. Maybe this season is going to prove to be different, but if they are uncontested, I really don't think that it is crazy to say that they have the potential to win grands. This is one of the trios that I am going to be most intrigued to see where people are actually going to predict them to finish if they are uncontested, because I just feel like they currently have such a wide range of where you could actually be predicting them. And then the next two trios, I really just have no clue how, for one, this off-spawn fight is going to go, and then two, how they're actually going to look after that off-spawn fight. It's the teams of Quizzy, Swizzy, and Murstache versus Malibu, Kaping, and Walks, and then also potentially the Frenchies are going to be there as well. I think the best case scenario for both of these teams is that the Frenchies are somehow not able to qualify, or they were just bluffing this whole time, and then in grand finals they end up surprise conning another team. And let's just say that does end up happening. I think for Queasy, his best chance to be able to win grands, and he's even said this himself, he believes he has a better chance at winning grand finals from a contested Demon's Domain than an Uncon Utopia City if their trio shows a similar dominance off spawn to what they had in season 1, where I'm pretty sure they won like 9-3 or 8-4 off spawn, and they literally almost won grand finals then. If they just copy and paste that performance into this grand finals as well, I think they 100% could have winning potential. But then for the trio of Malibu, Kaping, and Walks, they didn't necessarily look too hot when they got surprise conned by Vico Vino and Flixie last season. I don't really know how this off spawn fight is going to go in the grand finals, just because we haven't got to see it as much as we have as something like a Peterbot versus Pollo off spawn. But I think in a very similar situation to what I'm actually going to talk about for both of those trios later on, if one of these teams is just clearly better than the other one and they're able to win, say like 9-3 or 10-2 off spawn even, then they definitely could still win grand finals if they maximize their potential out of all of those games that they win off spawn. And then the last trio that I want to put in my wildcard team is actually a trio that is going to have to qualify to grand finals through the last chance qualifiers of Thomas HD, Sky, and Scroll. Now of course this team has to focus on even being able to qualify for grands first, but I feel like for a lot of people this was either their first or second pick for who they actually thought was going to be able to qualify for LAN. I just really do love both the fragging potential and the consistency potential out of the trio of Sky, Scroll, and Thomas HD, but I don't want to talk about them too much just in case they somehow don't even qualify for grands. Let's stick on EU here before I go to my tier 1 teams of NA. So for my tier 2 teams of EU, the first team I want to talk about is a trio that I really just didn't even know where I wanted to put them, but it is the team of Vidil, Cringe, and Volko. Now, this probably is a bit of recency bias, but I have really liked how this team has looked recently. A lot of the teams that I have in this tier, I'm going to say they have top 5 potential in this grand finals. It's so weird because this is another team that I just have so many different opinions on, because I don't know if I necessarily want to be able to predict them to actually qualify for LAN yet, but I wouldn't also be surprised if this team just placed like 5th place in grand finals. So I mean, maybe I want to hear some of your guys' opinions on this trio in the comment section down below, because I feel like I'm being a little bit too recency biased towards them. The next trio that I have in this tier is Tayson, Hriss, and Chicho. Now Tayson's trio has already qualified for LAN. They didn't necessarily do good in any of the 2 div cups, only being able to qualify for one of them and placing 28th place in that div cup. I just feel like this is probably going to be the hardest season to predict on both NA and EU because of how many teams are potentially contested, and just because this is the least amount of div cups we have ever had going into an FNCS. But the trio that I am probably the most confident in this entire tier is Pink, Nebs, and Kiro. They have placed 4th and 6th place in the 2 div cups so far this season. This is currently my favorite for being able to qualify for LAN, probably the first team that I have on my list. They placed 10th place in the last grand finals, which was a little bit lower than I actually thought they were going to finish, but they are a team that absolutely grinds together. They're a trio that has so much consistency, and like I was saying earlier, with how many teams are going to be contested on EU, this is honestly a trio that should finish inside of the top 5. All right, let's move on to the tier 1 of NA, the trios that I think have grand finals winning potential. The first team that I want to talk about, probably going to be my most controversial team in this list, but it is the trio of Ree, Cooper, and Curly. Now, last season in grand finals, they finished with the 3rd most elims in grands, and they are going to need to frag just like that once again if they want to potentially be able to win grand finals. Now, regardless of what you actually think about the zone luck that they had last season, if they don't get as good of zone luck this season, then Cooper is going to need to show us why he can potentially be a top 3 IGL on all of NA. People were so high on this trio at the very end of last season. This season has, over these past couple weeks, been very rough for them, so I completely understand the doubts for this trio. But even though for my recent Vidil talk, I try to be somebody that doesn't have too much recency bias, and I'm not just gonna say that this team is like fully washed up or something because of one mid div cup performance and then a very rough eval cup. They still were technically, when you think about it, the 3rd best team at the end of last season in the tournament that mattered the most. most. They're all going to need to play to their max potential, but we know they're going to have surge. They just need to show us if they can really be a grand finals winning team. And then the next two teams that I want to talk about that I feel like still deserve to be in this tier, because one, Pollo's trio has already showed us it, but Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual, I feel like if they're able to completely flip the script in 9-3 Pollo's trio offspawn and grands, as well as making the most out of every single endgame they're able to make, as we know they probably can since they've shown us when they're able to make it offspawn, they look like the best fighting team in the entire world, and the gap is probably a huge margin. But that has been the exact problem with this trio, is they just have not been able to even make it off spawn. And then on the other hand of things, for the trio of Pollo, Acorn, and Agers, they honestly just need to continue to do what they have done for the entire season. Win off spawn versus Peterbot's trio, and then go on to win the game, and even recently in the Eval Cup and Div Cup, win the entire tournament as well. This team has won 2 out of 4 games in the recent Eval Cup, and then in the recent Div Cup, they won 5-1 off spawn and won the entire Div Cup as well. This trio to me is the best team in the entire world right now, just because of all of the factors that go into what they have had to go through this season and still looking as good as they have been. I think if this trio was fully uncontested at Demon's Domain, they would be my pick to win this FNCS. But both of these trios are probably going to need to put in the most preparation before this Grands if they want to have any chance of winning it, because they are both contested by one of the other best fighting teams in the entire world, and they are also going to have to prep for just a grand finals in general. If either one of these teams are able to win Grands, it might go down as the most impressive FNCS win in Fortnite history. The next trio that I want to talk about is Kanata, Bolt, and Rapid. Now I think this trio needs to have the motto of take height, don't die. Bolt is going to need to look like a top 3 player in this Grands. He is going to need to be the X factor if they want to be able to win the whole thing, very similar to what we actually saw from him in week 1 of the Div Cup finals where they ended up winning it. We need another very similar Bolts performance from something like that. This has been the main trio that people are saying is going to give a fit to Clix, Yamzo, and Higgs for winning this grand finals, and I think as of right now I would probably have to agree with that. And then the last team, the team that is currently my FNCS favorite, the team that I am going to be picking to win this grand finals, is the trio of Clix, Yamzo, and Higgs. I think if they simply just replicate their performance from last grand finals, in which they finished with 849 points, which was a 149 point gap between 2nd and 3rd place, then they will be just fine and they should be able to win this grand finals. They just cannot get into their own heads and think that they need to do even more than they did last season, and they can't let the pressure of being the favorites get to them either. I have said this so many times though, I think Clix is used to the pressure, but when you really sit down and think about it, this team is going to have probably the most pressure in the entire world, because if they win this grand finals, all of the Clix fans are going to be so happy for him. They're going to be praising him. I am even myself going to say that they were the rightful winners to this Grands. But if they lose this grand finals, oh my goodness, if I were any one of these 3 players, I would not open Twitter for the next month after that, because the backlash that this team will receive if they don't win this grand finals is probably going to be something like we have never seen before. Now finally, let's actually move on to my EU Grands winning potential teams, the teams that I have in tier 1 right now. I only have 3 total trios here, and all 3 of them are currently uncontested. Let's start up with the trio of Berdoxy, Pablo, and Chino. I think these guys also just got to continue to do what they have been doing all season long. They finished tied for the 2nd most elims in all of grand finals last season. If they're able to just do that or even finish 1st, I think this really is going to be the team to be in this grand finals. They have arguably the best POI in the map, completely uncontested. They have been absolutely primed up this season as well, winning a Div Cup and just absolutely dominating whoever lands on them off spawn as well. The next trio that I have in this tier though is Vino, Vico, and Flixie. This trio placed 6th place in last grand finals with no drop spot. They now have a fully uncontested brutal boxcars. In week 1 of the Div Cup, they really struggled, placing 12th place in, but I think, like we said earlier, for somebody like a Focus, Mix, and an Upple, they just slowly learned and developed over time, because in the next Div Cup, they finished in 2nd place in. They had the most elims in all of grand finals last season. A lot of people would consider this team to be the best fighting team on the entire region. I think Vico really does have the ability to show why he is one of the best players in the entire world this grand finals, and if they win this Grands, I think he will be looked at as the MVP of the whole entire thing. And then the final trio that I have in this tier is the team that actually won Grands last season of Venya, Pixie, and Marius. A lot of people like to say that that this team was also pretty much gifted their win by getting pretty much every single zone, but at the same time, very similar to what you could say for Reed Cooper and Curly. Even if you want to say they were gifted zones, they still made the most out of the zones that they were given. Venya's trio won the most games in all of last grand finals, and especially with Queasy being contested this season, who is probably their main threat for high ground, they should have a pretty, once again, dominating high ground season for them in this grand finals. They were able to win the first Div Cup of the season, winning 3 out of the 5 games in that. They finished tied for the second most elims in all of last grand finals as well. We can't act like this is just a team that sits on high ground and does nothing. They have shown time and time again that they have real fighting ability, and I really do think that as of right now, these 3 trios are currently in the best positions on EU to win this grand finals. Other than that though, let me know what you guys agree with and disagree with in the comment section down below. Would love to have some discussions about this. Remember, subscribe to the channel if you guys are new, as we try our best to upload daily competitive content for you guys. If you guys want to support me even more, the best way to do so is by using code KDOG in the Fortnite item shop. YouTube says there's like one of these 2 videos up on the screen right now, so go check them out if you guys haven't already. Remember, once again, make sure you guys follow me on my Twitch or show up here on the day of grand finals, because we are going to be watching grand finals live on both YouTube and Twitch. Thank God for another day, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.